Well, Reverend, welcome to the channel. This is Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison, Theologist, New South Wales, Australia. Thank you for joining me. Beautiful place where I live. Sun's about to set in the background there. I was hydrofalling out there today and riding in the mountains up there this afternoon, thinking about life and what has happened in my relationships and where I went wrong and where the whole thing went wrong. It's not good to try and blame everybody else, and you've got to grow, viewers, to grow in life. You've got to dig inside yourself, not in a way to condemn yourself, but a way in which you can grow. Jesus said, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. And we need to be careful that we don't keep those grains of wheat that we need to use to help us develop on the shelf. We need to examine ourselves, look in the mirror. Don't blame everybody else. Try and find where you went wrong. Accept where the other person contributed. Analyze it, process it, do a post-mortem, and then have the funeral and bury it. And thank God that nobody got hurt, at least physically. Psychologically, yeah, we get damaged, we get narcissistic injury and all this stuff. You'll find, for me, in my last two relationships, I got on wonderfully with the people I was with, but there was just such dark triad characteristic traits coming from people around, relatives and things, that I just couldn't take it anymore. It wasn't who I was. It wasn't what was being portrayed. It was all delusion. I was being punished, and no, my family got concerned, and as I said, my boys wanted to go and talk about it all with these people, but there was no point, because it wasn't real, it wasn't true. As I said to them, me and her and the son was standing there talking, and I actually said to him after he finished, well, am I one of the good guys or the bad guys? And reluctantly and out of sufferance, he said, well, you're one of the good guys, and then immediately went inside and deleted me off Facebook. So I knew that there was going to be trouble, and my word, there was. I pushed back. I called Covert emotional incest. They didn't like that, but they'll thank me later. They'll all thank me later when they realise all I was trying to do was help. And it's such a damaging, horrible form of sufferance, psychological sufferance. Coming back beyond that, the lady I met that I married, we never had a hiccup until her son come along, and 10 weeks later the marriage was over. There were narcissistic traits shown by her leading up to this that I was never going to be able to help with or fix or resolve, unfortunately. But looking at the big picture again, you can only learn and count your losses and hopefully gain from it as well. And bless those people, let them go. Bless those that curse you, bless and do not curse. Jesus said, you'll ask questions for the rest of your life. That's just how relationships work. You don't stop asking questions and wondering how things could have been different and what possibilities are for the future for you. The thing about it is, and I've always said this to my children, whatever you do, whoever you meet, you're going to be at the mercy of the weakest part of resolving the relationship. If somebody can't resolve the problem, if somebody can't rise above the situation and fix it, you're going to be at the mercy of the level of that resolve. And I've tried to work through these things. In my last marriage, I had to start leaving the house. It was so disgusting. I stayed at my daughter's place, I stayed at my sister's place. The behaviour was so appalling between this woman and her son. It was good for them because they were in love with each other, but trying to be a man running the house and watching the laziness, and you'd come home from work. I was just thinking while I was motorcycling today, you come home from the house from work, and you work really hard. I'm a bricklayer. I was building units at the time with my two sons. They were going, Dad, what on earth is happening now? They told them to mind their own business, but these people don't think anyone notices, but they do. Your family notice, and they're trying to hope that it'll all work out for everyone, but covert emotional incest won't let things work out, I'm telling you. And it's usually, and I'm speaking to people that are coming in from the outside after the marriage has failed or after the parents of the child have parted and the surrogacy has taken place. You've got the golden child. Sometimes the mother will surrogate 2 or 3 children. It depends who's available and what's going on and how much she wants to whinge or complain. You'll find a lot of these people won't bring the issue to you, and they haven't done that in their past relationship. They haven't known how to resolve, but for some strange reason they will whinge to their children. And this is the destructive element of it. And this is where the children get undermined and abused. It's all abuse. It's all parentified abuse, and very damaging, not just for the child, but for the parent doesn't realise they're damaging themselves as well, because they're not resolving anything, and they're teaching their children that let's resolve things outside the relationship instead of resolving things inside the relationship and having the privacy of those things kept within the relationship. As you know, we've done some teachings on the Bible and the evidence of covert emotional incest in the Bible. It has always come from the dysfunction of parenting. We tried to find out who Abraham's mother was, and we did find some Jewish thoughts on it, and they believed that Abraham's mum, at that time, Nimrod was killing the children that were being born because there was a prophecy that somebody was going to come along that would overtake him, which was Abram, given to this legend or information. Abraham's mum decided to flee to a cave and have the child so that the child wouldn't be struck by Nimrod, very similar to what Jesus had to do when he went to Egypt. And then when she had the child, she abandoned the child, guys. She went to all this trouble and defied her husband and hid in a cave and went and had the child, and then she abandoned the child. Now, I don't know how the child found its way back to Abram, and we don't know what happened to the mother after that, but what we do know is Abraham was abandoned as a child by his mother and was possibly raised by, well, he would have been raised by the other women that Terah, his father, was associated with. There's a lot more I'm going to go into in the next video. I've had 2 goes at it and had to just can them because I wasn't happy with the content, but this is just a little insight into the fact that Abram was abandoned, and we see the way he treated his wife. I mean, it was just diabolical. It was just criminal, disgusting, nothing to be proud of. The woman was mentally abused, psychologically abused, sexually abused, passed on to other people, strangers, for Abraham's end, which was all out of fantasy and delusion. Remember, covert emotional incest will cause delusions and people will go after the triangulated person, or to save themselves. Excuse me so much, sorry. But in this case, Abraham was paranoid schizophrenic as they approached Egypt. He said to his wife, I fear that they're going to kill me because you're so beautiful and they're going to want to have sex with you. So tell them you're my sister. Now apparently she was his half-sister on his father's side. She was his half-sister on his father's side, not on his mother's side. So there was some, then there we see some actual family incest, sexual incest that had taken place in Abraham's marriage as well, which distorted his thinking in a way in which he didn't fully accept Sarai as a wife. He in turn abandoned her by passing her over to Pharaoh and his sexual deviancy. So she would have been raped, molested, had to reculturalize to a strange man, and this would have psychologically damaged and affected her. We'll look at her as we're going along. I'm setting the foundation for the damage that occurs, and why covert emotional incest comes out the way it does, because the parents turn away from one another. They don't want to have that element of intimacy with one another because they've been betrayed, they've been let down, they've been abused, they've been trodden on by the person that was supposed to love them. And of course, the parents then shift their attention and their intimacy supply to their children, and they parentify and enmesh and then start to share adult information with children that are just not supposed to be in that place. And of course, when in modern day society now, it becomes very possessive. And I mean enmity. Enmity is a word in the Bible, in Romans, that talks about irreconcilable differences. It will never be reconciled. And that's what happens here. I had an instance where these people will pretend there's nothing wrong when there damn well is. They're passive aggressive in its most serial form. You don't know what's going on because everything's so quiet. They don't speak, and you watch them. It's really funny. I wonder how you could explain it. It's like a mummy. A person's died. It's like these people are dead, and they're just being wrapped. As they unresolve, there's another wrap. As they don't resolve, there's another wrap of the bandage around them, and the unresolved goes on for so long, they become dead. They're a mummy. They're walking around like a mummy, and they want to. It's not just a normal mummy. These people want to do damage. Okay, and unresolved will always turn on the closest person to them, which is the partner, and the next thing they're looking for peace and everything from the outside of the relationship in. And they'll go into emotional affairs, they'll whinge and bitch and identify themselves with their children, and they'll undermine their relationship, which usually is self-prophetic with covert emotional incest. There's a lot to come. I hope you stay with me. I'm not a pioneer of it, but I'm 60 years old and I've seen it now for an accumulated period in my own life for about 25 years. I have no grievances with these people. They probably hate me, but they'll thank me later. They always have. A couple of them have tried to come back, but they wore me out. They frighten me too much to want to go back. And when you get defiled by covert emotional incest and harmed by it, and these people don't want to talk or try and fix anything, viewers, it really has a mental toll on you. It's so diabolical. It's so parasitical. If you're not aware of what it is, it connects you to the person so deeply because your mind's you are like a USB card plugged into their computer, and Sam Vaknin calls it, they're entraining you, they're programming you. Their mind is coming into your mind. Your mind is becoming their mind. They're there and they're not even there. They're there and they're not even there. And people call this love, but I call it in psychological, spiritual intrusion, where the relationships become so corrupted that you're now ruminating. Their personality now has become a part of your mind, and you're trying to escape this Trojan virus that's come into you, and you can't because it's in there. So you've got to accept and understand what's happened. You've got to realize that it's real. You've got to forgive yourself and the other people and hope that, everybody works out all right. They're going to despise you if you've called it, right? If you've had the intelligence to know what it is and call it. It's like calling a narcissist. That's not going to go down well. The woman will try and stay with you, but the children will feign psychological and physical problems from the exposure of the issue, and they'll feign illnesses. And I had one kid fainting at the doctors to make sure his mother would keep a focus on him and get out of the marriage. Other ones will accuse you of stuff, and the woman can be standing there and they're so involved with it, so attached, it just undermines everything. So be strong, be close to the Lord. I mean, the Lord's reprogramming me. I don't know how you get stuff out of your mind, but I allow the Holy Spirit to renew my mind by being close to Him. I'm now just over a month or going on to 2 months out, and feeling a lot better. I'm back into sports, which I didn't stop, but my mind's a lot clearer. And you do have grief. You have to go through the grief of the person that you were with and the disappointment. And then you really do. Jesus said, and I get it now, He said, let the dead bury their own dead. When they go away, all the bandages come off them as well, because they can carry on without having to worry about you being around or anything like that. And build yourself. Don't go rushing into other relationships and stuff like that. Give yourself time to heal. Give yourself time to process and recover. Give the relationship some dignity. And when you're ready, bounce back and do the best that you can. The problem for these people is, unfortunately, they're not going to want to see you, and they won't admit this, but they don't want to see you return to what you were before they come along. And thank God, for forgiveness. One of the things that happens with covert emotional incest is you start to become resentful and all this other stuff, and that's where I went, no, I've got to get out of this now. I'm starting to go dark myself, and if you're not dark by nature, that can really play on your mind. That really does twist your mind when you're a Christian. And so I just decided to let things go. Guys, be strong, stay in the Lord. This is Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison, New South Wales, Australia. Bye for now.